ladies and gentlemen, my name is Emily Sophia, and I'm going to be walking you guys through the latest episode of Hannibal, Season 2, Episode 3, Hassun? However you pronounce that. I haven't the slightest, but that's my best attempt. So, for those of you who are not yet caught up on the season or on the show in general, I would highly suggest that you queue up this video and come on back once you have done so. It is worth every penny of your time, and it is the most hysterically, disturbingly beautiful journey that you will ever traverse in the world of television. So do that because there will be spoilers in this review. So first and foremost, before I dive into the thick of things, quick public service announcement. For those of you who A, like the show, B, love the show, C, can't get enough of it, and I could go through the rest of the alphabet with other things that might pertain to your emotions about the show. Anyways, if you are a fan of NBC's Hannibal, then I highly, highly encourage you guys to watch the show live. Because as of late, from what I understand, the ratings have taken a bit of a nosedive. Maybe because some people are pansies about the show, or are too busy having lives, just all that silly stuff that is totally unnecessary, if you ask me. But I do encourage you guys to watch it live when you are able to, in order to get those ratings up so we can secure a third season. From what I understand, Brian Fuller, the showrunner, has about 7 or 8 that he has planned out. Like, he is ready to go full throttle with the story, and you know, he's chomping at the bit to get there. Everyone who's making the show is chomping at the bit to get there. And we too should be supporting that as the Fannibals. So do your best to catch it when the episodes air. I mean, maybe just freaking turn your TV on and go do what you need to do and DVR, whatever. Just make sure to attempt to do that so we can get more of the story, because the plot ever thickens, and at this point in time I feel that Hannibal's relationship with Will has never been more complex or multivalent than what we witnessed in taking the show from the crime zone into the legal zone. And that was really daunting for me as a reviewer and as somebody who's not super familiar with all that stuff. It took a while for me to digest this episode, and it was incredibly complex. There are a lot of moving pieces, and I'm gonna do my best to address everything as thoroughly as I possibly can. And as far as everyone's interpretations of and predictions about the episode and what's to come, really there's no right or wrong answer. The only wrong answer is one that you believe is the absolute best, and there is no other way that they're going to go about it. As long as you remain subject to change as far as your thoughts and ideas go, then you're pretty much in the pocket, because there's so many ways to interpret everything that we witnessed in this episode. At least that's the way I feel. Unless you've got an IQ that is higher than the Empire State Building, then maybe you figured it all out. Maybe it was laid bare for you. Maybe you are your own Will Graham sitting here running the show, figuring things out. But as for me, I was just ping-ponging back and forth trying to figure out all the pieces and what the implications of everything that we witnessed actually are. And I think there are kind of two teams that people have sort of divided into about this episode. I read about like 12 different reviews and synopses of this episode because I was just trying to glean from other people's thoughts and just seeing where everybody was at, taking the general temperature of the fandom, kind of checking to see what people were thinking. And there was one team that pretty much viewed this episode as well-produced fan fiction, focusing on the Will Graham and Hannibal relationship, in which we have become very much invested. And if you're even remotely a part of the Hannibal fan community, especially as it's manifested itself on Tumblr, then you know, the puppies and kittens and rainbows and romances that ensue in that part of the planet about Will and Hannibal and the undying bromance. And you know, with Hannibal being called to the stand and taking that as an opportunity to lavish even further his affections upon Will and all these other things. So a lot of people kind of saw this episode as fan fiction-esque in that they perceived Hannibal as doing everything in his power to free Will without implicating himself. Or perhaps knowingly running the risk of implicating himself, but still trying to undo everything that he has so artfully done. And not accidentally or anything. I mean, like, reading the motives of Hannibal, it's like he builds the Tower of Babel and now he wants to just deconstruct this thing brick by brick, you know. But then there are others who feel that, moreover, Hannibal is playing the game. It's not so much about the whole buddy-buddy, I miss you, I love you, sweetie, dearest darling. Not so much of that as it is a whole nother conspiracy working its way into the web of things, which I'm kind of, you know, I'm sort of vying on the side of the latter team because I think that Hannibal does have an affection and an affinity with Will in his mind. And he loves to just kind of lord that over Will and to take every opportunity he can to just, you know, plant a little kiss on the cheek of the betrayed. You know, it's a little bit of Judas and Jesus going on here. But so I can see that. But at the same time, I sense that this entire season is pregnant with a whole different plot, okay? And I mean, and probably a lot of you generally sense that out as well. But what we really have to talk about here is who is the poet that Will was referring to when he was dealing with the copycat slash admirer killer guy, woman, whoever it is. And he says, you know, this is the ink from which flows my poem. And Hannibal was kind of processing that situation with Will and asking him, you know, are you going to let this love of the admirer go to waste? The poem that he has written for you. Who is the poet? And it could be Hannibal, but I think that the show is trying to lead us to believe that it might be someone else. And if it is someone else, then it's gotta be somebody who's in cahoots with Hannibal, because that's the way that this works. He is the god in this universe, okay? And while he's happy to let people operate under the guise of free will, he's very much all about his divine privileges in his mind. So that's the big question. And I don't think it's necessarily a question as to whether or not the murder of the bailiff and of the judge were two different people. Both of them having the kill shots as part of the MO, and yet other methods of the Will Graham's past kills also being implemented into what was called Will Graham's greatest hits. And I just don't know. After everything I've read, I am still so awash in things, and it is, I just can't do this. This show is a mental exercise, and maybe that's why the ratings have been plummeting, because it's just too much brain work required. We just want to sit and watch people do things and be mean and be nice and conflict and trauma and, you know, just the basics. But no, nothing gets to be easy or simple or straightforward by any stretch of the imagination. How dull, just drab. But some people have anticipated that the new character who's going to be showing up later in the season, based on some press releases. Let me, I'm trying to think what the name is of the guy. It's somebody from the novel slash I don't know, maybe the movies. I'm not actually caught up on all of the films and stuff. I am a terrible fan, but I'm trying to think of what his name was. Oh, Michael Pitt's character. Yes, Michael Pitt. Some people anticipate that the admirer could be this guy, who is also intertwined with Hannibal, and that would be a means of this killer accessing the MO of Will's previous kills, and etc., etc. I sense that whoever it is, Hannibal is in cahoots with them if he himself is not directly involved in the process. And I had a really, really, really bizarre and not at all plausible thought earlier, but I just wanted to throw this out there just for discussion. But the fact, it was very strongly emphasized throughout the episode that there were distinct differences in this killer's approach, and that he shot the victims before disfiguring them, before cutting off the ear, before, you know, every single piece. First they were taken out, biting the bullet. And that's not something that Hannibal is really about. Not part of his aesthetic, if you will. However, when you think about somebody who uses a gun as opposed to beginning the visceral process of undoing life, like with a knife or what have you, with tools and all those intricate grotesqueries, but you think about somebody who uses a gun, and it could perhaps be someone who's not strong enough to take out the victims by forces other than a weapon that they can use at a distance to take them out, call it good. We think about Abigail Hobbs, and she learned to hunt from her father. She learned a hell of a lot from dear old daddy. And so I couldn't help but think of Abigail Hobbs and the fact that her death was inconclusive last season. This theory definitely verges on, you know, conspiracy theory as far as predictions for the show goes, and I don't necessarily hold to it myself, but entertain this with me for a moment, if you will. Usually in a show, when a character's death remains inconclusive, there is a distinct purpose for that. It's not necessarily the writers, the directors not wanting to show this character's death. I mean, by no means is Hannibal gonna, you know, it's not the type of show to just pussyfoot around things. Like, well, we can all just assume the situation because it's too grotesque to show on the screen. Every single episode, there's some moment that gets me full on gagging with this show, so I don't think it's about that. Typically, when the character's death is inconclusive, it means that there is more than meets the eye going on. Perhaps that they are still out there, earless or not. I mean, what if Abigail Hobbs was still in the picture? Is that too crazy? Maybe. I definitely don't think that it would be fun to romp around and with various body parts missing, as I can assume would be the case with her. And it doesn't seem like something that Hannibal would do. And what with the last scene that he shared with her, I mean, it doesn't make a ton of sense, but Hannibal kind of transcends all sense. You know, he has his own code, his own way of the world and of relating to and using other people. I don't know, man. I don't know. So there's a couple different theories out there. I mean, it's tantalizing to think that the killer, the admirer, could be someone that we already know, because that makes the shock value that much more exciting. But I mean, if they're gonna conjure up a really cool antagonist that we've not yet encountered, I am more than open to that. I'm always happy to have new psychopaths in my life just to torment my deepest and darkest dreams. I mean, that's really what we're on this earth for, right? Just to see how scary people can be and feel better about ourselves. Or weirder when we find those other crazies to be tantalizing in some way. But yeah, so leave all of your thoughts and theories in the comments. I will read them even if I don't get to respond, because I'm trying so hard to figure this out, and I love that it's all just beyond reach. Anyways, let's look at all the different characters and what transpired in this episode. There are also some really fantastic new guest characters that have come into the scene. You know, the prosecutor did a real good job of being less than likable. Will Graham's lawyer also kind of provided some level of comic relief as well in the scenes where he was trying to prep Alana for serving as Will's defense and trying to shift things and get the defense to take the right approach. He was really fun. And Cade also presents, you know, she's trying to use the long arm of the law to just put this freaking monster to bed, close the case, let's move on with the next round of murders, call it a day. Let's forget all of this ever happened. Sweep it under the rug. Well, not necessarily sweep it under the rug, trying to use the official legal justice system to do so, but, you know. And there's lots of little instances in the episode where that justice system is kind of played with and subverted. But she comes up against Jack and the fault that he bears for trying to bear Will's fault and for supporting him in some way. What made the episode such a tough watch was having to sit there with Will's silence and just taking what everyone else thinks about him. And at the end of the day, what do we get from the man himself? You know, and it's tough to see him so powerless. And yet he is gaining some clout. He's getting momentum and starting to piece things together between his little mental fly fishing excursions and whatnot. But we all need those, you know. Gotta stay in touch with nature to be sane, and he's trying. He's working at it. So we've got Jack. Jack is blaming the crap out of himself. And he just gives less than a flying flip at this point. His wife is dying from cancer, and he wants to make it a beautiful and, I mean, ironically, life-giving experience, those last days with her, and to just clear his conscience and his own slate for what he feels he did to Will in consistently going after him, turning him into his personal bloodhounds, and then the blood that was shed as a result of that. So he's basically his defense of Will, in a sense, could spell out his resignation, and he doesn't mind that. He's thinking about going to Italy with his lady love, and yet Hannibal is trying to keep Jack from putting himself into the grave with his wife, and is trying to convince him that at wit's end, when he has lost everything with Bella's passing, the law will, you know, and his work should be there for him and provide him with something to do. But what is Hannibal's motive for trying to convince Jack of that? Being that we know exactly where everything is going to go in this season, why does Hannibal still want to have Jack in the picture? Is Jack the next puppet that he's going to frame for Will's crimes in this crazy and convoluted attempt to free his beloved? The only other guy who understands him in the world. I don't know. But I was really trying to read into that interaction between them and why Hannibal is trying to keep Jack in the saddle. And then we've got Alana on the other end of the spectrum, where her feelings for Will are clouding and coloring every piece of her defense, of her argument for Will's unconsciousness. And she believes that Will did it, but she completely and utterly believes that it was not his fault. It was not something that he could own. And we sympathize really deeply for Alana in that. You just kind of want to smack everybody upside the head and be like, look, children, one and all, like, let's paint you a little picture, okay? But at the same time, I really felt deeply for her, and it was really powerful in that last scene that she shares with Will, where he's the one in chains, but he reaches out to put his hands on hers and to comfort her as she's in this desperate place of trying to figure out what can possibly be done for Will. And she has this grandiose notion of trying to save him. But I think that Will knows that he's already beyond that. And whatever's going to transpire from here on out is not about saving him. He has to win the game. the Game of Thrones, if you will, okay? And we know who's currently sitting on that bad boy as we speak. And we'll see what becomes of that position of his and who gets the crown. And then, of course, Dr. Chilton discusses how Will won't let anybody so much as touch his brain, and he senses that Will has constructed, sort of like Bedelia had talked about before with Hannibal, about the well-tailored person suit, and that the desperate and vulnerable character that Will puts on for the world is indeed just a character to mask his ultimate goal of using his ability to profile killers to come out on top by basically besting all of them. He knows them in and out, and he's gonna be the best one of them all. And we caught a little smirk of Hannibal's as everyone is trying to paint Will as the smartest guy in the room, if not the most unstable, and he just kind of has a moment because all of this is reflecting back on him and his work, and this is his show, this is his jam. He is. God, it's crazy. And of course we have the return of Freddie Lowndes in her bodacious hat. It was her fashion sense is really distressing to me. Of all the things in the show that induce gags, something about the way that she presents herself to the world gets my indigestion roaring at full speed. Gotta keep the Pepto close, you know. But yeah, so she tries to overblow her relationship with Abigail Hobbs in order to put things back on Will. But Will's lawyer does a nice little turnaround on her and talking about all the times that she got sued for libel and settled and just all that good stuff. So basically discrediting her in a heartbeat. And that was one little win in the midst of a sea of stepping backwards further and further with everyone coming up on the stand. And I think, and Hannibal's defense was really fascinating as well. And he tries to bring in the evidence about the killer of the admirer, the poem tableaus, as it were. But that's immediately shot down as well, and he still does use his position to declare himself Will's friend through and through, as we could only expect. But and I need to say something really quick before I lose it in my head, something to keep in mind that I thought was really impactful about this episode. We began with Will dreaming about giving himself the electric chair treatment. There is two of him, one of him is putting him to death. So in his mind, he knows the severity of everything that's at stake. And I also love that scene, the parallels of Will getting suited up and Hannibal getting suited up and checking out his posterior. We all saw that, bro. We know. You know. But anyways, and then at the very end, Will has another dream where the door of his cell comes open and he's following the stag, which we know is representative of his early idea of Hannibal. So he starts following it towards the light, towards freedom, and then looks back and sees Hannibal holding open the gate. Hannibal himself, not the Wendigo, even though we did see the Wendigo make a little appearance in the courtroom as he was swearing in the oath. But, and he's gesturing for Will to come on back inside. So, those two parallels where it's both Hannibal leading him out and pulling him in, and where it's Will, like, staying alive, but then also putting himself to death. I think that we need to keep those two parallels in mind as we consider the state that Will is in trying to figure out how to go forward. What can be salvaged from this insanity. And I would love to hear your thoughts. Love, love, love. So please lavish them upon me. Flood that comment section with your thoughts and hopes and fears and desires. Anything and everything. Again, I haven't read all the books and the films that the show kind of ties in with, but I think it's important to keep in mind that this could really be its own monster, you know? So who do you think is the poet? What do you think this poem is all about? And is this mysterious figure trying to get to know Will as Hannibal has? Or is it another means by which Hannibal is getting to know Will? Or is he using somebody else to get to know Will? Friendship is, you know, friendship is magic, y'all. That's all I gotta say. I think that's kind of the way that Hannibal approaches this situation. Is he's a bit of a wizard, okay? But there's, and again, really gorgeous episode. The death tableaus were quite exquisite. I mean, especially the one with the stringing up of the judge and what Hannibal says about how the law is senseless. You know, so it almost makes you feel like it might have been something that he did, but you know, again, the evidence suggests all kinds of crazy things. And is this, you know, the mistrial that we get in the end, is this going to help Will or hurt him? And we see that very, very quickly, Will is going to piece everything together. If you guys saw the trailer for next week, he's getting into the thick of it. Hannibal is not just the buddy-buddy type anymore. Not that he has been this entire time. But the pieces are falling into place, and whether that is a part of Hannibal's scheme or no, we shall soon see. So let's discuss in the comments. Thank you for bearing with me and all of the insanities. There's so much to discuss, and again, I kind of tried to tap into everything, into the heart of issues. Great moments all around. I'm gonna watch this episode again real soon, and by the way, watch those episodes live and the legit way if you are able to. Let's keep the show on air, because I want to see this story through from first to last. Let us get it done, because it's up to us, you know, balls in our court. So, take care. Do everything you can this week to save Will Graham. Keep that in mind with all of your tasks, be they great or mundane. Keep that in mind. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, or Tumblr. Links in the description if you want to hear me talk about all kinds of other stuff. And thank you all for being the best audience in the world. I don't know what I'd do without you. Y'all are great. And I will be back before you know it.